everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So the story of the Hollywood hunks goes basically as follows. In the beginning of their careers, they're just heartthrobs for the younger women and young girls and stuff like that, and they're mostly in these weird small little movies. Then they become a little bit older, and then they become, you know, the desired object for all women. And this is also the point where they are usually in these romantic comedies and they are kind of be quite insufferable and you just want them to go away. But when they hit their middle ages, they have a tendency of not only picking better movies, they also have a tendency of becoming better actors, to the point where you actually are surprised of how good they actually were. Johnny Depp has done it, Bradley Cooper has done it, Brad Pitt has done it, but none has done so more than Matthew McConaughey, because there was a point during the 2000s where I absolutely hated the man. Every time I saw him on a poster, it was like a warning sign: do not see this movie. He was a arguably charming and handsome dude, but he was just such a douchebag and he was so unbearable to watch that I actively hated him. And then around 2010-2012, it all turned around. For me, it was the movie The Lincoln Lawyer that was the movie that, you know, was the big turnaround for me when it came to Matthew McConaughey. After that, every time he shows up, he's just one of the greatest actors I've seen, and some of the movies he has done has been absolutely fantastic, and he's usually one of the best things about the movie. That is, however, not the movie that we're gonna take a look at today. No. This is one of the worst examples of Matthew McConaughey you could ever find. Here he is in full-on douche mode, and you know what? It is not the worst thing about this movie. I think that the title of the movie, Fool's Gold, is basically the fools were the idiots who gave their gold to see this fucking movie. But let's find out why this movie is so bad. Let's find out why Matthew McConaughey isn't the worst thing about this movie. This is Fool's Gold. In the 17th or 18th century, there was this Spanish galleon who were supposed to, you know, have sunken off the coast of Florida, close to the Bahamas. In the cargo was supposed to be lots of gold and gemstones and stuff like that. And we have this guy played by Matthew McConaughey who has been searching for the sunken boat together with his wife played by Kate Hudson. That has sort of been the glue that has, you know, united them. And she has grown sick and tired of his failed attempts at, you know, finding this thing. And she doesn't want to search for the treasure anymore because there is no treasure. But he is sort of determined to prove that there is a treasure. And despite, you know, them being, you know, being divorced, he still searches for this thing and accidentally, you know, burns down her boat, which is not going to be, you know, any way of, you know, winning her back or anything like that, or even finding the treasure. So now they are divorced. But there is also a murder contract that has been put out on Matthew McConaughey by Big Bunny. Big Bunny is this rapper that has turned into some kind of a gangster sort of, that also wants to find this treasure. But there might be one last chance for them, not only to, you know, get together again, but also maybe finding this treasure, because Kate's employer is played by Donald Sutherland, who is an adventure-hungry millionaire who offers to, you know, help them, and together they will go off and try to, you know, find the treasure. So this is one of these treasure hunt movies where we have a number of outcomes. They can either find the treasure, they can either find out that the treasure was to be together again, or they can find a small portion of the treasure. There is a, you know, litany of versions to this story. Of course, there can also be the fact that there is no treasure, or that somebody else who is more deserving of the treasure gets the treasure. I'm not going to spoil what the outcome of this movie is. So we have a classical treasure hunt movie that is a bit of a hit and miss, but the reason why this is such a big miss is the following: the casting. The casting is the absolute bane of my existence when it comes to this movie, because I've already said that Matthew McConaughey in this movie is on full-on douche mode, and he is so reprehensible, and I hated him so much in this movie that I actively wanted his punchable face to not only be punched but also mangled and eaten by sharks. But he has one person in this movie that actually out-douches him, and that is Kate Hudson. I hate Kate Hudson. For some reason, they have given her role after role after role, and she is always horrible. And this movie might be the most horrible version of Kate Hudson I've ever seen. The bickering between them could potentially have been funny, but I just wanted them to shut the fuck up. And then we have Donald Sutherland, easily one of my favorite actors of all time. And I said, well, at least we have one thing to fall back on. But then he opened his mouth and that fucking accent came over his lips, and I said, oh no, what have you done to my beautiful Sutherland? Oh no, not even Donald Sutherland is good in this movie. Add to that an annoying Kevin Hart. At least Ray Winston, who is also in this movie, is kind of okay, but whenever you have a movie where Kevin Hart is the least annoying person in the entire movie, then you know something is quite wrong with the whole thing. Add to that a bunch of other quite forgettable side characters, also including the horrible bimbo daughter of Donald Sutherland, which I was really annoyed by. So there will be a lot of, diving and trying to find clues and stuff like that, and trying to find this galleon. The thing is that Matthew McConaughey has found this plate which contains a clue which indicates where the galleon has been sinking. That is the reason why he was able to swoon himself into the company of Donald Sutherland. And while I think that it is interesting with finding clues and trying to find treasure and stuff like that, I actively didn't want them to find any treasure because I hated every single character in this movie, and I actively wanted them dead, or at least that the movie should end. Now, the movie is technically not boring. The pace is pretty good, and it's always good with fun in the sun, and there are good production values surrounding this thing, but the jokes just didn't work. And also the anti-chemistry between Kate Hudson and Matthew McConaughey was also the bane of my existence. And as I said, the bickering and arguing between them just wouldn't end, and I just hated every time they started doing that. I actively didn't want them to end up together, and I actively didn't want them to find the fucking treasure. And what remains after that is a lackluster adventure movie and a really bad comedy. Now, this movie is too well produced, and some small jokes kinda actually worked a little bit, so I cannot dogpile on this movie too much, but this is a complete waste of time. This is a really bad 2008 movie, not one of the worst ones of 2008, but it should be mentioned as a complete and utter failure. And I'm really sad about it in a way, because you have an original story and you have a bunch of really good actors, and also Kate Hudson, and I'm a little bit sad that the audience wasn't allowed to really like a movie that was an original story that, maybe could have persuaded Hollywood to do more original stories. But when we get movies like Fool's Gold, can you blame them for sticking to, things that are, sure things? I don't know. But this is a very forgettable movie, and it is an actively annoying movie that I'm never going to see again. I don't recommend anybody to see. If you like movies like, National Treasure or the Da Vinci Code and stuff like that, those movies are better, And the movie cannot decide for itself whether it wants to be a fun romantic comedy or if it wants to be a dramatic adventure movie, treasure hunt. They try to combine the two things, and it doesn't really mesh that well. It should have been either a more straight up treasure hunt adventure movie, or more of a wacky relationship comedy set to the background of this treasure hunting thing. They were trying to deserve two masters at the same time, and it didn't work. Now, do I think that this movie is terrible? No, I do not. This is why casting is so important. If we could have populated this movie with a bunch of really good and well written characters played by extremely talented people, I think you could turn this concept into an absolute stormer of a movie. But I don't exactly know who should have done it, but I just know it wasn't these people playing these characters. This movie I do not recommend, but it looked good and it was never boring, but it was just not that interesting, and I was just annoyed by almost everybody in the entire movie. Fool's Gold is an egotistical and self-obsessed mess. I give this movie 21 points. This is an unfunny comedy, an adventure with no suspense and characters you don't care about. This is quite a mess indeed. So I'll see you next time for, well, so-and-so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.